very good afternoon to one and all, and welcome to a very topical webinar on drafting of higher order questions based on Bloom's taxonomy. We are very privileged to have the gracious presence of Professor Parimal Vyas, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. We are also pleased to have Professor B.S. Chakrabarty, Director of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of the University, Professor Uma Iyer, Director of the Management Development Center, and of course our speaker for the day, Mr. Ramani Venkat. I would now request Professor Chakrabarty for the welcome note and thereafter to introduce Honorable Vice Chancellor. Sir, please.
Thank you, Archana ji.
Yeah.
Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Professor Parimal Vyas, Mr. Ramani Venkat, the invited speaker for the session, Professor Uma Iyer, Director of Management Development Center, all participants, a very good afternoon and namaste to all of you. Well, a really very timely and what it's, I would say, subject as a webinar, which is really the need of the day. In fact, it's almost 3 months that we have not been able to interact face to face, and this situation is going to remain for quite some time now. It's very obvious. Just the other day, a couple of days back, hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
I'm audible?
Yes, sir.
The other day, the syndicate of the MS University of Baroda had taken a decision to conduct all the exams online. Now, this is a challenge for the administration, but I think today's lecture might give us very timely and very useful tips as to how to organize these exams. In fact, all throughout these 3 months, we have been active online. We have had more than 1,000 sessions and more than 100 webinars. And this was possible due to the inspiring and motivational leadership of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Parimal Vyas, who has been very supportive and understanding of the cause of these online sessions. And see, today the situation is such that we had to resort to online system for even examinations. On a formal note, he is a dual professor of the faculties of commerce as well as management. He has been the chairman of several NAAC peer teams. He is also the member of National Board of Accreditation, NBA. Many distinctions to his credit. In fact, many communities of Gujarat he is representing. Suffice to say that under his leadership, we have gone a long way in all dimensions. The time is short, and we would look forward to hearing him as well as the invited speaker. I thank Professor Vyas and Mr. Ramani Venkat for sparing their time and joining us. Thank you and wish you all the best. Over to Archana ji.
Yes, sir, thank you so much. May I now request Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, Professor Parimal Vyas, to kindly give the opening remarks.
Good afternoon. I hope I'm audible to all of you. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Audible. Yeah, thank you, Arun. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Let me try to.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you. Let me try to give some reflections. But before I do that, I believe this is the purpose of internal quality assurance cell, that we need to continually put efforts to improve the quality benchmark, and we have to also ensure that whatever that we do,
Has Sir lost the connection? Arun Anand, sir?
Yeah, it does seem that the connection is lost.
am I audible now again?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, back again,
Because
sir.
there was some disconnect.
Yes.
I hope I could see there was some disconnect that happened technically, but I hope now we are
Yes,
connected
sir.
again.
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience. So let us now go back to the topic for which we have decided to. Yeah, before I continue, I would request all the attendees and the panelists to please mute your mic, because that would help us to better coordinate our interaction. So let us I am not sure how many of us are aware of about the Bloom's taxonomy. Just for your kind information, Benjamin Bloom, who in fact he chaired the committee way back in 1956, and then the very basic purpose of these Bloom's taxonomy, is to it talks about the assessment of learning outcomes. The very basic purpose of Bloom's taxonomy is to classify. In fact, it's a hierarchical model, and then it attempts to classify various educational learning objectives into various levels. It has been revised also, in 2001, and it's an ongoing process. But basically, these Bloom's taxonomy, as you all know, I hope some of you have heard of it. It has got three, basic learning objectives, which focuses on. Well, the first focus is on cognitive. The second focus is on affective, and the third focus is on sensory. And I would say that let me relate it with the question paper that we set, and it's very interesting to note that let's say that there are 6 important steps through which we all pass through when we talk about the various knowledge dimensions, and when we talk about the taxonomy table which is available in the body of knowledge. Now, the first is remember. I would say that many a times my personal experience makes me to say that when we are interacting with the students, we are listening to some experts, when we are reading, there is a kind of a belief that no, we fail to distinguish the very basic difference between remembering and understanding. We may remember, but we may not understand. Now, I believe, how do we distinguish between this first and the second level? It is just a recall. Remember, focus. Please try to understand that. Remember, only focus is only on maybe identification. I think, but we may not understand. If an object is kept, we would just say that yes, it is an object, but we may not know the properties of that object to just give you an example. So there is a difference between the first and the second level. We may remember, but that is only the identification part, or maybe the what we call we are just trying to recognize at the most, but we may not understand. I think if we really want to understand, I think we will have to go to its properties. That's very important. The third is I'm sorry. The third is application. I think that is very, very important. At times, let me share my own example because an expert is going to talk about it. But when we, for example, setting a question paper for the students, and this is my personal experience which I'm sharing, I would ask my students that the question is that you describe, you define, you comment, you demonstrate, you apply. I would say that students, they would reproduce whatever understanding and whatever that they can remember, but they would not be able to distinguish the differences between the various terms that I have used. Even at times when we are assessing a student, maybe even in a practical Viva examination which you're conducting, or we are assessing a description which is given by a student, I would say that this Bloom's taxonomy is extremely important because it provides us a scientific support to assess the learning outcomes. So I was trying to talk about the various cognitive process dimensions. So the first which I talked about it was with reference to remember, then understand, then application. Now I think it's very important. What is application? We say that when we get impressed with some speaker, who can remember, mug up, and then, bring his or her emotions into his presentation. And we feel that, oh, he's so knowledgeable. He's having depth of knowledge. I think that is not all, because the application part, no, not necessarily that, because there are certain people where they have a depth of the knowledge, but probably the way they express themselves, it may not be that effective. So I believe application part is very, very important. I always say all those attendees or faculty members, I would request them that how can we improve our application part? I believe a good teacher is one who can relate his subject with surroundings. Whenever he or she is in a class, or whenever you are interacting with the students, I believe the third is very, very important, that application part. But then after the application, you have to see that the analysis. Now that is also very, very crucial because when we talk about analysis, as you all understand that yes, analysis will also ask us to relate with the interpretation, which is extremely important. And then evaluation. I believe now very, very few of us would be able to distinguish between what we call it as analysis and evaluation. And then finally, I think the last level, which I think now we are talking about, is the creation. So these are the 6 cognitive processes which we try to assess when we are trying to decide when we are trying to assess the learning outcomes of a student, on a factual knowledge, on a conceptual knowledge, on a procedural knowledge, and we also talk about metacognitive knowledge. I really don't want to take in great detail, but then as I said, when you talk about the first, that is remember, it deals with the recognition, it deals with the identification, it deals with the remember, whether you can or whether student can remember or not. Our examination system which we follow, I hope all of you would agree with me, it focuses, it heavily is, it focuses on whether student can recall, student can remember or not. Probably we really need to put in a lot of emphasis now on understanding. But then that understanding, it could be in any form. It could be in oral, it could be in written, it could be in a graphical form. When we talk about understanding, I would say that yes, we need to relate it with the interpretation part of it. Now, interpretation part, when we want to talk about it, we have to deal with the clarification, paraphrasing, representation, translation of it. Exemplifying, I think, it's very important. I believe sometimes we, in fact, are talking about some concept, and if we can give illustration, a student would be able to very easily relate it. Classification, I think that's very important. Like I would say that when we talk about if you are assessing the knowledge component of an individual, then we say that whether here working knowledge is required, or reasonable knowledge is required, or depth of knowledge is required. Maybe these are the three levels which I just thought I would try to, give you as an example. So that classification is also very, very important. Now, summarizing, I think, how do you, I think abstract, for example, I would share my personal experience that if you have written maybe an article, or maybe a piece of research paper, the very basic question that arises is that why, what made you to undertake this research study, and what is the key inference? Now that's very, very important. Abstracting and generalizing, I believe that's very important. Summarizing, I think that we always experience it is students, and when we are assessing learning outcomes, I think we are very quick to reflect upon, without going into details in a systematic and scientific way. And we are at times we are quite fast to summarize. Let's go to the another aspect which is very important, which is related with the understanding, is inferring. I think inference. Now, I believe, I would say that when you're talking about the world of research, there also some of my colleagues, they would agree with me that what is your major finding, or what is your major objective, or what is the major conclusion? What do you want to, what you like to extrapolate? What exactly you like to predict? Now, these are the various attempts that we make in Bloom's taxonomy, using Bloom's taxonomy to draw logical conclusions. Comparison, I think that's again understanding. Yeah, if I believe that is where it's a tea and coffee. Comparison would start happening, or we take gender to distinguish based on certain important properties. So comparison is also at times to map, to differentiate, to contrast, or sometimes even we try to match the properties that would enhance the understanding. Explanation, I believe that again, when you talk about the explanation, that is also very, very important, which would reveal, which would reflect the understanding. Then we go to the what we call the third part, which is which I would like to talk about of the knowledge dimension, is the execution. I think that's very, very important. Carrying out, like what procedure you would adopt, to carry out any task, and the last one, which now we are talking about, is implementation. What will you do? How would you apply? What procedure you would apply? The difference between executing and implementation. I think when we talk about implementation, we talk about applying a procedure to an unfamiliar task. So what I would like to say that I won't take much of your time, but then this is what I wanted to talk about. The first three dimensions on which I have tried to relate myself. The first, remember, Second, understand. Third is apply. Taking it further, the fourth, as I said, analyze. It focuses on differentiation. It focuses on organizing, and it also sometimes focusing on deconstructing. You know, we are trying to determine a point of view, a bias. We are trying to, you know, what we call deconstruct a set of values or the intent. And then when after these analysis, when we want to talk about the evaluation part, yes, checking, as I said, we read, we test, we monitor, we detect, and yeah, the another aspect that we use in evaluation is the judgment, and we are trying to critique something that has been brought to you know, our desk. And yes, and then we try to build further. Now that is known as the last you know, key element in the knowledge dimension that we talk about is the create. We try to generalize, we try to plan, we try to produce. I think when we are trying to create, we hypothesize, and then we try to say that whatever that we have hypothesized, is it can it be generalized, and that thing, and for that we you know, carry out various studies. Maybe this is you know, a brief overview which I thought I should give you as far as the Bloom's taxonomy is concerned. But the challenge before us, I'll tell you, because I am sure the expert is going to talk about all the various dimensions, but I thought I would only focus, you know, precisely on cognitive hierarchy, you know, which wherein I thought that let me relate to it with the remembering part, understanding, application, analysis, evaluation, and creation. I think we also talk about you know, the second component is the affective hierarchy, where we talk about receiving, responding, valuing, and characterizing. And then there is also a psychometer hierarchy, which is now being talked about, which deals with it deals with more with the sensory aspects, the physical abilities, the perceptual abilities, the skill movements, and basic fundamental movements, and so on and so forth. What I understand here now, let me relate it with the webinar. The purpose of these webinar is that, as Dr. Chakravarti very correctly, you know, outlined, that we are going to conduct an online examination of the students, and I'll tell you, it is expected nowadays, you know, even under the evaluation and the assessment of you know, teachers in the university under the new revised framework, that if you have designed a course, when you have designed a course, are you what are the objectives that you are trying to accomplish? The program objectives that you know, you will have to list out. Then you will have to see to it that how those program objectives, you know, you would transmit. How would you, you know, put it into action? Now that is extremely important. And the third term that now we use is mapping of the objectives. Now, at least in the academic world, we are trying to very systematically, when we design a course or maybe an academic program, it is very important that we decide the program objectives. If it consists of various courses that we offer, we also need to make ourselves understand about the objectives for which we are going to, you know, handle students for those courses. And then we will try to map at the end of, you know, the completion of the course, that what were the desirable objectives, what skills we wanted to develop. And I would say that mapping of objectives, what methods have you decided to follow for mapping or the measurement of these objectives? It may seem, you know, because setting a question paper, I believe, or when we are evaluating a student, you know, we are conducting YY examination, we use them not just for academic purpose, even for the various, you know, activities, like maybe even a recruitment, selection of various students for various activities. I believe assessment and evaluation, both are very, very important. Both are not one in the same. Let us realize that. And I'll tell you that we need to keep in mind that at what level, what exactly we want to evaluate, what exactly we want that after undergoing a particular course, what student, what we expect student to, you know, attain, what we expect student to gain. So we really don't want to make it very, very technical. Expert is here, he would try to relate it, but Bloom's taxonomy has been used, it is used very systematically, and nowadays, you know, it has received a prominence, you know, in the academic world, and it is being used. It is very, very important because at times we observe, we experience, and we've noticed that you know, the objectives with which a particular course has been designed, and the way, the methodology that you follow for its execution, and then the way you evaluate, you know, you find there are contradictions, there are complexities. And I think that is why probably the feedback of student now is becoming very important in the academic world. In fact, that's very important at the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. I said that, okay, fine, completion of syllabus is important, but then not the mechanical completion of the syllabus, how it has been transmitted. Let me tell you one of my own experience, which probably I can share with all my attendees today, is that, you know, the reflections part of participants is extremely important. And I would say that I really do not want to reflect on, because if we conduct a webinar of this kind, at the end of webinar, you know, almost all attendees, they say, please send us the link of the feedback. And that feedback, we know it is so standardized. I'm sorry, it is just a feedback. What we need is reflection. I strongly believe we need to distinguish between reflection and feedback. Feedback is a mechanical process. Like, you know, you have, for example, so we all go to watch a movie, and I would say, oh, how was the movie? Now I think we say, you, so I really enjoyed it, or it was so, it was okay. I don't think that I would consider it as no response. So when we invest time, we invest resources, when we deal with the careers of the students, not just in setting question paper, I would say, in designing, I would say rather, in almost each and every activity that we conduct in the universities, because largely we are talking about an academic institution. So I really don't want to move beyond academics, but then it's very important. And I'll tell you, good institutions, my personal experience makes me to say that not only there is an in-house class interaction after the end of the session, you know, the teacher or the instructor would assess, you know, a group, almost all students, in terms of their responsiveness, in terms of their curiosity, in terms of interactions. And I'll tell you, one of the good practice which I've seen in premier institutions is that at the end of each of the session, what we call it as a lecture or a class, you are expected to send your reflection. You are supposed to send. And in these reflections, it is not a feedback. Feedback would say, oh, the session was really encouraging, informative, inspiring. We got a lot of knowledge. I'm sorry. When I read somebody that, no, sir, we attended your session and we received knowledge, I don't think that knowledge word cannot be used here in reflection. It is just a feedback, and feedback can be standardized. You know, it can be automated for the purpose of analysis, evaluation, and for you know, immediate improvement that we want to make about, or some major you know, difference, or if there is some basic conflict, if we find on whatever that we do, if it is not being received, feedback can help you. But we should not you know, use it as synonyms. What we know, what we need is reflections. And I think probably let us not understand Bloom's taxonomy just, as to, because I'll tell you what we do in a classroom is that we teach. And I always say that teaching is transmission of information from textbook to notebook. Student teachers, they dictate, or students, they copy out, or they take the past study material, then they try to read, memorize, mug it up and omit it out in the exam. And then they say, oh, we relate it with his CGPA or SGPA, whatever you call. I think, let me tell you why I'm taking some time in reaching out to all my attendees. Is I'm very clear, we are not organizing these webinars just to, give you certificate. Certificate in any case you're going to get. But I'll tell you, please understand the difference between teaching and learning. You may teach, but then there's no learning which happens. I'll tell you, we need to become increasingly learner-centric. And by learning, what I understand is, how do we differentiate between teaching and learning? Teaching, it may be a physical or it may be a mental process, transformation, and an exchange of information which happens, I think when we are, reading a newspaper or watching a television serial, I think that happens. But learning is what? How do we differentiate? What is the fundamental difference between teaching and learning? I think learning stimulates, the thought process. I think that is very, very, very important. It brings about a change, behavioral change. Again, it's a very big area where I would not like to go into detailed discussion. But let me tell you, when you read, maybe on Wikipedia about Bloom's taxonomy, you will write one line that, oh, Bloom's taxonomy is used, to measure the learning outcomes. But I believe these two powerful words, learning outcome, I think you may really need a webinar on that, which would only focus on learning outcome. I think this is very, very important. And I'm very happy I could share some of my thoughts, though incomplete. Maybe I have tried to keep it at a very, very basic level. But I wish, like before I close again, I would just request all my attendees and those who are faculty members, where you're required to set question paper of different type. I would just request you that please, whenever you are preparing a question paper on which all students, they will have to respond to you, please, the use of words, please please make use of very simple words, keep it extremely clear. And what I would say is that please also, try to relate it with the level of difficulty. Is it moderate? Is it too difficult? Because I'll tell you what I understand before I close. I would appreciate a philosophy that when we are evaluating a student through a formal mode of examination, or we are looking at, report which he or she has submitted, I'll tell you, it is just one small component of our entire assessment that we are considering. Student has, he might have put in a lot of efforts, not just when he or she attends class. It is just one component of his entire learning process. He or she, he passes through so many other activities. And I believe we really need to capture all that in our evaluation process. And I think Bloom's taxonomy is one way, maybe one approach that we can use to discipline ourselves, to standardize our activities, and then to relate the means with an end. I believe, I think today's webinar is of a paramount importance to all attendees. I appreciate all those attendees across the country. I believe they are all attending this webinar. We welcome all of you, and I would request that please, give your 100%. That is the purpose with which we have organized webinar. And whenever such initiative is undertaken by the MS University of Baroda by the IQAC. Please support. I congratulate once again Professor Uma Iyer, the director of MDC, and Professor V.S. Chakravarti, the director IQAC, for having muster courage to have a webinar on Bloom's taxonomy based on higher order multiple choice questions, because I think this is going to have a lot of influence on the future of our students in near future. My best wishes to all of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your encouraging words and for setting the tone of the webinar. Thank you for the orientation on Bloom's taxonomy. And especially I would like to mention how you have sensitized us to take back the reflections from this webinar rather than just standardized feedback. Thank you very much, sir. I would now request Professor Uma Iyer to say a few words about the webinar and thereafter introduce our guest speaker. Uma, ma'am, please.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I heartily welcome all the participants to this webinar on Bloom's taxonomy-based higher order MCQs and automatic assessment tools. Now, in today's world, technology has revolutionized many sectors. The education sector also prefers to keep pace with time. Smart classrooms, high-tech labs, and more recently, if you see, online teaching, learning, and evaluation systems are bringing about a digital transformation in the education sector. Now, in this context, assessment is always one of the challenging aspects within academia, regardless of the delivery mode, even more so during these testing times. COVID-19 is presumably the greatest challenge that education systems have ever faced. Now, our Honorable Vice Chancellor has very elegantly put across all the dimensions of the Bloom's taxonomy. However, as he emphasized, the end goal of better assessment is better learning. Using the assessment tool as a learning tool rather than a measurement exercise enhances the learning experience. Now, in this context, MCQs have often faced criticism for being employed only to gauge rote learned facts or recalling data, but actually that is not correct, as MCQs can also be used to evaluate analytical, creative, or critical thinking with just the right amount of expertise and ground knowledge. This is not an easy task, but to help us with this, we have an expert with us today, Mr. Ramani Venkat. I welcome you, sir, and I will just share his biodata to the audience. Mr. Ramani Venkat has done BE in Electronics and Telecom from the Regional Engineering College, now NIT Silchar. After that, he did the Masters in Marketing Management from the reputed Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai University. He has over 25 plus years of experience in top multinational companies, holding senior management positions in several IT companies. He is a neuro-linguistic program trainer, and he's also a mentor to 6 startups. He is a serial entrepreneur and does consultancy to mid-sized companies in the area of sales and strategic management. Now, in addition to this, he conducts customized workshops. A few examples are like mindset programming, art of influencing others, solutions for selling and strategizing, gamification, that is customized games to work on various business activities, team building, and case studies on marketing and sales. Mr. Ramani Venkat also conducts several training programs in colleges for staff and students, conducts several corporate trainings, and has conducted several Mind Power Magic workshops across Asia, including Dubai and Kuwait. With this versatile he's a versatile personality having and with his rich IT background, I think he is the right person to deliver today's talk. I welcome you, sir.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks for the very kind words, ma'am. I hope I live up to the reputation of what you have built up. Okay. So before we start, I have a small, I'll just start playing the slides and I'll continue it from there. Before we start, good morning to everybody. Special thanks to Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, and all the members here. Thanks for the kind words. Yes, let's start. But before we start, I just want to make a small announcement. I'm slightly tweaking the program based on Honorable VC sir's, speech which I heard. I was under the impression that Bloom's taxonomy is already part and parcel across all colleges there. And then you are only looking at it from a, how do you use higher order Bloom's taxonomy MCQs, basically multiple choice questions or closed-ended questions to be used in the exams. But after hearing the speech, I thought I will spend a little bit more time on Bloom's taxonomy as well. And I will reduce the time on the Google Forms assessment tool example. I'll just run you through that for 5-10 minutes. So, we do justice to the entire course on understanding Bloom's taxonomy, then understanding higher order MCQs, how do I create higher order questions, and then we focus a little bit on the assessment tools. One small disclaimer before I start. Any point in time, keep the questions coming. I'll take the questions at the end because this is a webinar kind of a setup. So let me take the questions at the end, but don't stop the thought process. When you get a question in your mind, just type it and keep it posted so that we don't lose out on the questions. Okay, so with this background, let us start. I just wanted to start with a nice quote. Life mein ek hi cheez guaranteed hai, that is questions. Okay, so when we stop asking questions, that means probably we are not alive. Okay, so it's all about questions are guaranteed. Finding answers, that's where the challenge is. Questions are always there. We need to find answers. So one particular question is ma'am was talking about how do I MCQs mein, how can I bring in higher order learning? When people who are wondering what is higher order learning, hold on for a few minutes. When we come to that, you will understand. So how to create, the moment I start asking the right questions, how to create, my mind will start working on the answers. But if I start thinking it is not possible, probably it will never be possible. So asking the right questions actually helps us seek answers. So that's for the first slide. Special thanks to this university for inviting me. Once again, I thank everybody there. It's a nice initiative. Let it keep going on. So let us continue. So first and foremost, let me set the expectations from this webinar. That's a nice psychological statement, a nice joke there. The kid is telling the teacher, "Thoda downgrade kar do mera marks ko, agar high expectation ho jayega to my parents will start expecting this from me, and so it is a bigger problem. So don't have high expectations about this course." So I'm just specifying exactly what we are going to cover in this session today. Okay. First of all, a honest introspection on our paper setting today, on how we set question papers today. whether it's an MCQ or an essay type question or honest introspection. I'll add one more thing here. An honest introspection on the way we conduct classes also will be included. That's a last minute fine tuning that I have done. The next one is, yes, to create higher order learning questions, efforts are required from our end. From as a faculty, we need to take that extra. It's very easy to ask descriptive type questions, without probably even doing much of research. We can ask descriptive type questions, but higher order learning questions from an MCQ perspective requires extra efforts. So I'll probably share with you the understanding the fact that efforts are required. Once that acceptance is there, then probably we can focus on the techniques to frame them, which I will be sharing. How do we, there are some small staple, simple rules, how you can actually use those techniques to frame higher order MCQ questions. And then lastly, around 5-10 minutes, I'll just run you through how to create Google assessment forms. You can take my email address, probably at any point in time you're getting stuck on the Google assessment forms kind of a scenario. You can touch base with me one-to-one, and I can probably share you some videos on how to create them as well, if in case we run short of time. I don't mind extending it a bit here and there. That flexibility, I'll give it to the organizers, the controllers with them in terms of times. Yeah, so let us get started. So having said this, let us talk about the first one, self-introspection. Okay, let us ask some basic tough questions to ourselves so that once we seek the answers, we can take it to the next level. The first question is, it's a statement which I say, questions ka power ye hai ki when we ask questions, it helps us seek answers. So let me ask you some basic thought-provoking questions. First question which I want to ask everybody, I know I can't wait for a reply here because it's a kind of a webinar kind of a setup and not a web meeting kind of a setup. But let me ask you a small question. What is the difference between a student who is getting 65% or 85%? Two students, one student getting 65% marks and the other student getting 85% marks. The 85 could be 90, the 65 could be 60. If I were to ask a question, who has attained mastery in the subject, will we be in a position to answer that? Let's be honest to accept it. Probably you can't say that the 85% student has attained a mastery in the subject or 65% has attained mastery in the subject. It's very tough to give that answer. That means there is somewhere a challenge in our examinations. Okay, due respect, of course, we can't, being in the system, we can't do much about it. But let us at least understand and introspect from ourselves. So the basic difference between this, which I want to share, is high scores indicates performance. If a student is getting 85%, you can very blankly tell this guy is a performer. Okay, the word performer does not mean mastery in a particular topic or a mastery in a particular subject. So mastery comes when a particular individual has achieved the desired role or the desired goal, okay, which was designed at the starting of the course or the curriculum. So that is where the entire revolution needs to happen. So let us get started with what sir was talking of. VC sir was talking about this. I'm just going to go a little bit more detail. There is something called as cognitive learning. Okay, and there is something, basically cognitive learning is basically three things. One is memory, by hearting. I would like to give an example of understanding stuff without knowing or understanding, remembering stuff without understanding. A classic example will be the shlokas that we have learned. Every religion has got their own scripts, religious scripts. हम लोग उसको काफी हद तक बायहार्ट किए हैं. I don't know Sanskrit, but I know a lot of shlokas. वो starting word निकला तो end तक cut it will go. Now, if you ask me, do you know the meaning of it? I probably will say I don't know. That means my memory was strong. Okay, but I'm remembering. I remember stuff, but have I understood what I have studied? Big question mark. So that is the memory part of the cognitive learning. The application comes not only understanding. After you understand what has been done. Okay, after you understand what has been done, that is when you take it to the next level of applying knowledge. Now here, I'm just going to come back on screen and I have a small question. I'll just ask you all. Yeah, I can share the PPTs. Don't worry on that. Just send me a mail. Okay. So let me ask you all a small question to show about understanding of learning. It's a nice activity which I'll do. I will tell you all a small story. At the end of the story, I'll ask you all a question. The first, I won't waste much time. The first few people who answer it, I will probably give them the credit. And those who don't get the answer, nothing wrong. It's nothing wrong with it. But somewhere, this is what happens in our education system. I'll tell you a story and ask you a small question. And let us see who uses the question window to answer the question. Answer this. What a question that I asked. It goes this way. A father and his son are traveling in a two-wheeler from Bombay to Baroda on the highway. I repeat, a father and his son are traveling in a two-wheeler from Bombay to Baroda on the highway. On the way, they meet with an accident. Father dies on the spot. His son is seriously injured. Villagers from a nearby village come, pick up the boy and take him to a hospital nearby. Doctor examines the boy and says, I can save him provided I do an operation on him within the next 5 minutes. But to do the operation, I need the AC in the operation theater to be working. Unfortunately, the AC is not working. The only AC mechanic in town has gone to native place and is going to come back after 5 days. If you take the boy to the hospital next to town, it will take you 1 hour to reach. One villager says, Doctor, yesterday in my neighbor's house, I overheard that there is an AC mechanic. Can I call this person? Doctor says yes. Villager picks up the phone, speaks to the neighbor, speaks to the AC mechanic, and the AC mechanic comes to the hospital in 5 minutes. AC mechanic checks the AC and says, I can repair this in the next 5 minutes. But before I repair, is it possible for me to have a look at the patient? Doctor takes the AC mechanic to the ward. On seeing the boy, the AC mechanic says, oh my God, this is my son. If you know the answer, why the AC mechanic said this is my son, type it on the QA answer. Come on, let's see. Why did the AC mechanic say this is my son? Anybody? Lovely. I've got one right answer. Okay, a few right answers. Yes, it's absolutely fine. Yeah, the AC mechanic is a lady. Now understand this. I'm sure a few people would not have got this. Now this is where the difference between learning concepts and knowing concepts happen. How do you apply knowledge? If I were to, okay, you can just please stop typing on the QA, please. It's been flooding with it. Thanks so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just stop. Yeah. She's a lady. Empathy is wrong, Sandhya ma'am. Okay, that's okay. So understand this. So predominantly what happened here was, I don't blame anybody for not getting this. Somewhere if I were to ask a question, who are the two people who will say this is my son? I'm very sure everybody in this room would have said, even a 5-year-old bacha would have said, father and mother are the only two people who will say this is my son. But what happened was, when we twisted this question slightly differently and posed it in front of people, what happened was the application part. Okay, I'm not saying even if you don't get the answer, it's probably because of a pattern in your mind saying that AC mechanic matlab ek aadmi hai. This pattern reimposition happens psychologically also. It's nothing to do with only an application of knowledge. But understand, very important to this activity, I actually wanted to bring about only one concept. That do we want our students to get good marks? And unless you ask the question in the prescribed format, they would score marks, rather than get your students probably less marks, but getting them to apply what they have learned, ability to solve problems. Don't you think that would bring about mastery in a particular course or a particular discipline or a particular degree that they are doing? That is the entire objective of Bloom's taxonomy, which works on the cognitive thought learning process. So coming back to the slides, okay, just coming back to the slides. So the first part was memory. The second part was the application. And the third part was, there is a knowledge application. And then how do you comprehend the entire thing and put it into one kind of this thing? The question that I asked was not a direct question, was not even an indirect question. It wanted you to understand that there is this mother-son relationship is also part of a universal spectrum. So it was something which involved a total comprehension of the subject or the topic that we were discussing. So this is predominantly what cognitive learning is all about. And Bloom's taxonomy helps. It's a simple process which was modified later on in the year 2005. It's shifting between two things. Synthesis and evaluation became evaluation and create. Forget the drill. We'll be talking about that in more detail. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. Okay. Now talking about the next slide, before we talk about Bloom's taxonomy, let us understand questions are very powerful. Okay. So it can bring about a cognitive learning experience. Okay. Bring focus back to learning outcomes. Bloom's taxonomy actually helps us bring back what is, before starting a course, before starting a lecture, in fact, every lecture, you need to be very clear that today's lecture is going to bring about this learning outcome in my students. Let the learning outcomes be defined. Okay, that definition comes from 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Hold on your horses. To understand what Bloom's taxonomy is all about, let me, like sir was talking about this, I will tell you the same thing. Since I know my audience is varied backgrounds with varied disciplines, I have a nice mix. So I'll try to keep the examples very simple, which everybody knows. Most of them might be something from the basic science stream or MBA stream, but these questions I promise will not be very tough. I'm sure everybody will understand this. And for certain technical things, I'll give an explanation as well. Now, suppose, let us understand power of questions from a Bloom's taxonomy perspective. Okay. Yeah. So power of this thing from a, first of all of us know what is law of demand. Basically, we say that when the price increases, now can you all see the PPT? Can somebody from the panel tell me whether you can see the PPT?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So basically where I'm coming from is our law of demand says that if the price increases, the demand will come down. If the price of a product is down, demand will increase. So this is predominantly what law of demand says, which everybody understands that. Now, if I were to ask a question, 5 marks question, explain law of demand. Okay. Now then probably as per the verb, okay, Bloom's taxonomy has got certain verbs. Explain means you just have to explain what it means. Okay. So this is not remembrance. You probably can tell what law of demand is. You can put the certain conditions explicit, and you can also tell that these are some of the examples of the law of demand. So probably for 5 marks, you can be given the 5 marks. But if the same question were to be asked slightly differently, removing the word explain with the word evaluate law of demand, okay, then the question is no more the same question, even though it might be for 5 marks. Like sir said, the students write the same answer and people who correct give the same marks. But as faculties, if we are going to follow Bloom's taxonomy and ask questions which are higher order, which are evaluation based questions, then we need to evaluate that question, that answer based on the L1, L2, L3, L5, L6 level kind of a thing. For example, if the question is evaluation, then the student cannot just write what is the definition. We need to bring about situations where law of demand would have failed. For example, one case of example where law of demand failed was a classic case called as Irish potato case. Basically, they used to add potatoes and meat in a in the proportion of 1:1 to cook a particular dish. In Ireland, it happened. Now inflation happened. Prices of meat also increased. Prices of potato also increased. But if they noticed that even though potato price increased, people started buying more potatoes. And then they came to know that why they are buying more potatoes is they started replacing potatoes with meat. So if the ratio was 1:1, 1 kilo of potato, 1 kilo of meat, because of inflation, the meat was much more costlier. They made it half kilo of potato and 1.5 kilos of half kilo of meat and 1.5 kilos of potato. So thereby, even though price got increased, consumption got increased. So this was so we need to start, and this is evaluation of the same question. So as faculty, if we are asking and following Bloom's taxonomy, we need to understand that the evaluation pattern has also got to be at that level, at that scale. Okay, this is a small example. We'll be talking about much more about stuff at any point in time. Okay, now this is exactly what is Bloom's taxonomy. Earlier I did not plan to spend a lot of time here, but today I will spend a lot of time. Okay, yeah, because I think that's where we need to start. Okay, first and foremost thing is it goes this way. The first thing everybody knows, remembering. Okay, basically you are able to, what you do is you keep going. Yeah, you are going to give 1 second, my slide is not easy. Yeah. So basically, first thing is remembrance. Basically, where we test the memory. You will teach something in the class. Can we say define, state? All those things will be coming in the define phase. The next level, okay, is L2. First one is L1. Second one is level. Okay, L2. L2 is about whether they have understood what they are by hearting. Whether they have understood. It could be in their local language. It could be in their mother tongue. But whether they have understood the concepts. That is the second part. Now, having L1 and L2, to be very honest, is of no practical purpose unless they are going to use it in the real world. I know how to solve a problem. And I'll give one more example. If there are any mechanical engineers or civil engineers here, the lid of a box will of manholes, normally manholes that they make, right? manholes that people make will always be circular in nature. It will not be of any other geometrical shape, which is square, rhombus, rectangle. The reason is something which we studied in mathematics on triangle plane. Sum of two sides will always be greater than the third side. Okay, or sum of two sides of a triangle will always be greater than the. So, for example, let me come back to the video mode to understand this. So, just to understand this, suppose if this was the manhole kept like this, and this was the Dakkan, the lid on top of it. All of you can see this. So, but this, even this space is not right. You know why? Because this big lid can be put into this particular manhole. That is why they say always make it circular. The lid will always be circular because the lid can never fall inside the hole. So there is a lot of application here. So you ask a student, understood concept, two sides of a triangle is always greater than the third side? Yes, understood. But is it of any use if you don't put it into practice? Then that is a challenge. Industry wants you to put things into practice. Problem solving should be done with respect to what we have learned. That is where the application of knowledge comes in. And that is predominantly what is applying what we have learned. So L3 say we start higher order learning starts. L1 and L2 we say lower order learning. L3 application is higher order. Then coming analyzing stuff. Okay, I know how to apply what I have studied, but do I take it to the next level? Do I analyze? Do I compare? And take that analysis part. I'll show it the simpler example once to say. Evaluation is where you start checking whether what you have analyzed is right. Is there a deviation? Is it possible that at some cases this will not work? Is there a possibility to do it in another way? That is where evaluation phase comes up. And creation is probably where you connect two domains, connect physics to chemistry, connect physics to biotechnology, biology and technology is as history. That's where the creation space comes. So these are the 6 levels. To understand better, I'm just going to use a real-time example of a very simple thing which we studied in school. Okay, so I'm using this. I was thinking about what example to write, and yesterday it struck me that to appeal to all audience, I'm sure everybody knows photosynthesis. So if I am teaching L1 in photosynthesis, the basic question that would be is what I'm teaching in a classroom will be what is photosynthesis, where everybody will by heart this happened, oxygen gets released in the process, and starch or sugar, carbohydrates gets fermenting, and this needs chlorophyll. Now this is remembering. I have by hearted the definition and I blah 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 blah. I give L2 level teaching could be what is the role of chlorophyll in plants. Now that is knowledge. Okay, where I'm not by hearting, but I'm understanding certain stuff. Where okay, this needs to be there. That is the understanding part of it. These two are easy to understand. Now let's go. As teachers in a classroom, we need to take our students from L1, L2 to L3. So if your students, trust me, it is not the teacher teaching these concepts. The students should start probing. Students should ask questions and then take them to the next level where when is the right time to sleep under a tree? Don't give out the answer to your students. The students, you ask this question and the students will start thinking. Morning time because of sunlight, oxygen also comes out as a byproduct. That means night time it's only carbon dioxide, but morning time along with carbon dioxide some kind of oxygen which comes out. So the best time to sleep under a tree will be morning. Now this is an application of the concept. So if you ask this question and the student is answering this question, that means you're actually creating and taking your students, handholding them from L2 to L3. This is application. Let's now come to the L4. Now you are making students, taking them from this level to the next level. What happens to plants that are not green? Okay, these are called, these use other plants like carnivorous plants kind of a thing that they are not green, but they use other thing for their photosynthesis. Now here you're taking students to start analyzing. Ye hua to hai, is it necessary? What happens if green color chlorophyll nahi hai, so what happens? And you take them to the next level. So that's the analysis part of the same, how you take your students from level 3 to level 4. Let's come about L5. I've given 2 examples of evaluation. Is it possible to do for plants to do photosynthesis artificially? Sorry, there's a spelling mistake on that. It is photosynthesis. Okay, yeah, photosynthesis artificially. Can I use UV light? Can I replicate narrow, HV? What do you call? They have got this ultraviolet lights that replicate sunlight. Is it possible? Or would there be a difference between photosynthesis to natural light and through artificial light? Now here I have taken my students to something beyond what photosynthesis is. An application, it's beyond application, it's beyond analytical stage. Now here they are evaluating different options, which is probably across domains. And the last one, creating. Now here I'm bringing in complete, like for example, if a real estate or an architecture comes and says, I want to put a beautiful plant in the restroom, bathroom of a company, of a corporate world, which plant will you suggest? Now, there are 2-3 conditions that have come in. One is there is no light. Okay, in the restrooms will have only artificial light. And then there is also something which is called aesthetic effort. The plant should also look beautiful. So how do I play with it? So how do the student takes that in L6? Okay, so this is predominantly with a simple example of photosynthesis. I wanted to show you how Bloom's taxonomy works on L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, and L6. There are a few people who have asked me a question. Let me just have a look at the question and then I decide whether I wait to answer this question or I go further. Please use it. Use the question only to ask a question because that way we don't flood the thing. Thanks so much. In case I'll just share my email at the end. In case somebody wants PPTs, you can just mail it to me and I'll send them back. Okay, that's something. So don't use the question answer session for private blasting. Thanks so much. Yeah. So let us come further. Going further, let me come back to the slides. Yeah. Yes. There might be a small lag between I showing these slides and the slides coming in onto your screen. That's a lag which is always there in a live streaming session. Okay, so don't spend too much time on that. Okay, next. Now let us come to higher order questions. From a joking perspective, higher order does not mean you're standing up on a ladder and writing that. Okay, that doesn't make it a higher order question. Higher order question predominantly focuses on making the students think. Now, this question, when I say higher order question, I'm not restricting myself to asking questions only in the exam. Even in a day-to-day classroom, the more questions a teacher asks, the more higher order learning happens. The less number of questions means lower order learning, because where you are telling them this, and that's what they take, that, they L1 by heart, understand maximum, and then they vomit in the exam. So that's not higher order. So higher order is a place where we go ahead and ask questions so that making the students think. The objective is to make students think. Okay. So it's L3 ke upar hi, we say these are higher order questions, predominantly with the apply, analyze, evaluate, and create space. Now, this is a very strong statement I'm making. I hope I'm not hurting anybody. If you are to create higher order questions or ask higher order questions, then we must be at L6 level on that subject. If our expertise is not L6, then how are we to able to create L5 level questions? Okay, that is where the challenge comes in. So any domain where we are experts, once you are an expert, you would be able to, you will have a control on that subject. You know, you can actually start playing around with questions, and that to attain and playing around with questions, we need to be L6. We need to be able to understand deep in, deep out of that particular domain or that particular topic. Now that's the first and foremost. So we need to work hard. That's what I'm studying. Success also. Now one more thing. Success of a particular exam or asking higher order question also decides if the same spirit in which the question has been asked, are we evaluating students on the same spirit? What I meant is, if I have asked the question explain or I have asked the question evaluate, my answer sheets, the answer that a student given has to be different for both. That needs to be taken care of. So people who are evaluating also should evaluate it in the same spirit in which the question was asked. If it is a lower order question, I'm okay to give marks for a lower order answer. But if the question is a higher order question, then we want answers from a higher order perspective. So this is where the success of a particular questioning plays a difference. Okay. Why higher order questions? Okay. I always said this, you know, there's a nice joke of, think about that character of Three Idiots, you know, a person who we all are, that friend, you know, who never studies, but, you know, still comes out with higher order because probably his conceptual knowledge was strong. So he did not mug up stuff. He understood concepts and he was able to take it to that higher order level. Okay. So first and foremost, from a faculty's perspective, this is not from a student's faculty. Why we should ask higher order questions is from a faculty's perspective. The first one is it brings about creativity in you. Asking descriptive questions. Okay, I've got a question. How to create? Yeah, ma'am, I'm going to ask that. I'm going to how to create this. I'm going to talk about it. Hold on. Okay. Questions I'll take it at the end. I just want to see if some messages come that audible, not audible or something. Okay. So you love the challenge. You know, when you create questions which are tough to ask, you love the questioning process. So that brings a creativity in you. Yes, it does take efforts, okay, to start with. It takes efforts. But once you get the hang of asking higher order MCQs, once you put in your mind, then it doesn't take extra time. That's what I want to say. It takes a little bit of efforts, but doesn't take time once you've got the hang of it. Once you get passionate about it, it starts happening at a much faster pace. You can test a large amount of contents. The beauty about an MCQ is it is 1 mark, 2 mark question. So in 100 marks, you can probably ask 50 questions or 100 questions. Whereas when you give 5 marks question or descriptive answer questions, we probably can ask only around 10 questions. And in 10 questions, I'm very limited to what I want to test. Whereas in MCQs, I can actually have a nice ambit of 50 questions from different spectrums, and I can play around with my questions and play around with domains, inside the thing. I can test large areas of content. That's a big plus that we have. Students love it. From another perspective, descriptive answers, students love it. And I'll tell you one thing. When you write an answer and then somebody tells you this was not the answer, there was this particular catch in the question. And when you realize that you missed out a small catch, as a student, you feel excited. Nobody bothers about what they have missed in a descriptive answer question. Explain something in 10 marks question, 1 point a particular student has missed, nobody will discuss on that. But MCQ में अगर एक छोटा सा सर ने वो 2 x दिया था, मैंने x के बदले y ले लिया था, ऐसे ही सोच के, then that you remember that you talk to other students on that. ये एक particular सर ने जबरदस्त पूछा था, that one twist was there in the question. So that makes them talk about the questions and make them love it. They remember what they have learned for a longer time. That's the biggest advantage of higher order questions. Next, recall value of concepts increase because students are no more by-hearting stuff. They are starting to apply. So when you apply and you learn something, people remember it for a lifetime. And I'm very sure even if somebody did not get the mother part of in the AC mechanic story that I said, henceforth, any point in time, I'm very sure whenever this kind of questions come, your first thought process will be, okay, there is some application which I did not do, so I will do it this time. So that is the recall value that comes. You will probably ruminate on that a much longer time, the AC mechanic part. Just an example. That's why I gave that example. And the best part about it, your students become to a large extent industry ready because they understand cognitive ability to solve problems. The cognitive learning to solve problems starts in being inculcated. Because in a real life scenario, my boss is not bothered whether I know definition of marketing, I know definition of sales. My boss is bothered about my market mein jaake customer ko convince karke, am I able to get in business? Okay, if I'm a sales guy, if I'm an R&D guy, I'm not bothered whether you know the definition of a particular concept, but do you know how to apply it? I'm more bothered. So it builds a beautiful gap. The gap between a fresher and what industry expectation, that gap gets merged. Top schools, top colleges, top B schools across India, across the world actually start focusing on Bloom's taxonomy to get their students geared up to problem solving. So that is a predominant advantage of why higher order questions. Having said this, let us now go about how to set it. But I just want to spend one small minute on ETQ is essay type questions versus MCQs. What is the difference between it? Probably are not a lot of differences, but I'm just highlighting a few differences. The first difference is open-ended questions, closed-ended questions. Now, which is easy to ask? Open-ended questions is easy to ask. For example, I don't know anything about the Vietnam War. Okay, I'm just using this as an example. But still, I can ask 10 questions or 100 questions of Vietnam War on open-ended questions. Why? Because I can say, when did it happen? How did it happen? The Vietnam War was fought between whom and whom? Tell me more about the Vietnam War. What is the repercussions of the Vietnam War? What is the aftermath of the Vietnam War? Why was the Vietnam War start? Why did the Vietnam War start? What's the catalyst in getting the war? I can ask hundreds of describe the war, explain the war. I can ask 100 questions without even knowing about the subject. But to ask even one single closed-ended question where I have to give multiple choices, I need to know about that choices डालने के लिए मुझे right choice पता होना चाहिए, right? So closed-ended questions, you need to put in more efforts. Okay, yeah, coming easy to ask, needs preparation, and then choice of words. You can actually just take a normal question and put a particular Bloom's taxonomy verb. There are a lot of verbs, and then that becomes a higher order question. But here we need to analyze the answers before framing the question. That's the beauty about higher order MCQ questions. We need to analyze the answers before framing the question. We don't frame the question and then put the answers. We actually do it the other way around here. We actually frame answers and then we put the question here. Okay. So to understand more about that, let us now go ahead. How to create the main objective of today's webinar. I know I'm a bit, we've just come to the starting of the webinar officially. Yeah. So how to create higher order MCQs. MCQ stands for multiple choice questions. Okay. First one. Let us understand this process. Spend some time. I'm just coming back to the screen. I'm not going to use slides for this particular topic because I want you all to understand a very important concept called as chunking up and chunking down. Okay. Yeah. Chunking up. That's a nice question which has come on how do we conduct descriptive questions. Somebody please ask me this question at the end. I will share that. Okay. Let us understand this process of chunking up, chunking down. This is basically a psychological term, and neuro-linguistic programming has something called as chunking up, chunking down. I'm just taking that dimension here to understand this question. Suppose I have a statement. Now understand this. Suppose this is a statement. Suppose I'm making a statement saying that this is a pen. Pen. This is a pen. This is a statement. Now let us understand chunking down questions. Chunking down questions are those questions which is a subset of the statement this is a pen. Understood this part? Subset of this is the, I'll give you some examples. What is the color of the pen? Is it not a subset of this is a pen? What is this pen made of? Is it not a subset of the statement this is a pen? Understood everybody? The subset part of it. Basically, which paper do you write this? Which paper can you write this pen with? So understood subset of this pen. Okay. So basically any question which is a subset of the statement is called as chunking down. Chunking up questions, we have to go broader. Chunking up questions are any question or any question jiska subset the statement is. I'll give you an example. What are the different things people use to write? Understood? So this is a pen. They use pen, pencil, chalk piece, markers, etc. And then the statement comes, this is a pen. Correct? Understood? Chunking up questions, any statement which is, you know, a subset of the statement which are a problem that you are looking at, that is called chunking down. This will go into specializing. This will go inside more detail. Whereas chunking up is where we start spreading across. So if we understand these two concepts of chunking lateral bhi hota hai. Chunking lateral is something sidewise. Like for example, if this pen is Reynolds pen, I talk about a competitor pen. Okay, what are the similarities between a Reynolds pen and a some other Lynx pen? Okay, that becomes chunking lateral. Okay, understanding the slight subtle difference between chunking up, chunking down, and chunking sidewise. But if we know how to chunk up and know how to chunk down, then questioning becomes to a large extent, the process of questioning, the process of asking questions becomes easier. Framing questions becomes easier. So this is one thing which I wanted to share, because when I'm going and sharing with you on how to create questions, I will be telling this is a chunked up question or a chunked down question, so that you will get some clarity. Okay, let me just check the questions. Is it the same as learning? Yes, ma'am. Is it like a funnel from broad to specific? Yes, but I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to basically use this as the same mechanism to ask questions rather than understanding. I'm going to use it as the same mechanism to ask questions. So let me go further back to my slide. Where was the slide? Yes. So the second, now here there are 3 techniques. I'm going to talk to you 3 techniques on how to create higher order MCQs. In detail, we'll be talking about predominantly most of these higher order MCQs. If you look at GATE exam, you look at every of these STAT exams, MAT exams, all people use predominantly higher order questioning. It will always be in one of these 3 techniques only, except for a very rare few. Real world scenarios, analysis of visuals, and an answer plus why. So predominantly, this is where it works from. So let us come and talk about each of these in detail. Okay. So first one. Suppose if there was an essay type question, explain product placement. This is the marketing concept, but I'll just tell you very easily just to understand this. Product placement means a particular product. It is not an advertisement, but that product, they pay money for some people. For example, we had this TV serials names placed on some company's name, Amul's XYZ program. So what they have done is they have put the product name as part of the TV serial and they pay money to the producer of the TV serial, and that is called product placement. It's not a direct advertisement, it's called latent advertisement. Now, if this was the question, which an essay type question from a marketing exam, I say, okay, explain product placement. Now, the same technical concept, higher order question, we can put it in real life scenario as this. In the movie Chennai Express, which of the following quality qualify for product placement? Coconut, Lassi, Nokia, Lumia, and Rajnikant. Now understand this. Coconut, the song is there, okay, but coconut is not a brand. So coconut, if they have not understood concepts, then coconut will become the wrong answer. Lassi is a generic product. It is not a brand. So Lassi ka nahi hai. Nokia, Lumia, yes, I'm sure all of you remember that Nokia paid money to Chennai Express movie for Shah Rukh Khan to tell the specification of the entire product. And then Deepika Padukone asked him, "Isme main call kar sakti hoon kya karte?" That was a joke in the movie, but look at the power of product placement there. So you connect that this way. And lastly, the song mein Rajnikant, the song that comes, no, Coconut Melasi, let's Rajnikant Talaiva and all. Now understand, if Rajnikant had paid money, then it becomes product placement. But if Rajnikant has not paid money, it is not product placement. So this is how, by a simple higher order MCQ, you could actually bring on 2-3 concepts for the students to understand, and they have to tick mark which all is the right answer. So if we spend time, and tell me something, if a student understands this answer and gives the right answer, will he not remember the subject for life? It actually helps them, take them to the next level in terms of understanding concepts. So this is an example of real world scenarios. You can even, science teachers can use a bucket of hot water, bucket of cold water, and an empty bucket to mix. Which water will you pour first on the empty bucket without stirring and mixing? The water should attain equilibrium. The funda is pour the hot molecules, hot water first and then the cold water. Now, application of knowledge, because hot water, the heat will go from bottom to top and then equilibrium will be reached. If you put cold water first and then put hot water, then equilibrium will not be reached. So how you use, an MCQ kind of a thing to bring about this thing using real world scenarios. So this is something where, as domain experts, I'm very sure when you are expert in a particular subject, when you're seeing around, you will find hundreds of application based questions which can test their L3, L4, L5, L6 level knowledge in a particular subject by framing the right questions. So this is the first example. Okay, next, let us now come to the second one. How we can actually bring about higher order learning is usage of visuals. Now, this is a beautiful example. I spoke about law of demand, so I brought the same thing. Now, look at this. Which of the following depicts law of demand? A and B are more or less the same, but look at the third one. I just changed the x-axis and the y-axis. Now, if a student has not understood concepts, he will get stuck here. He has to understand that when one is increasing, is the other decreasing, or when one is decreasing, other is increasing. So that brings about a cognitive learning here. So it's a very simple explanation. I don't need to explain this slide. So you can actually bring in concepts by using visuals, okay, graphs and the likes of it, or showcasing some picture and asking questions on that. Okay, I think I'm getting a few more question answer. Somebody is more bothered about feedback of the session. Okay, hold on to your questions, please. Yeah. How can we get reflection? Okay, I think we are getting too much questions. Okay, hold on. Yeah, going further, I have a lot to cover. Okay, yeah. Now, the third technique to create higher order questions is answer plus Y, where we give the answers, that multiple choices that we give, we will actually give a cause and effect. Like, for example, we will give a cause and effect. So that cause and effect, we can actually use certain things to confuse people. Now, law of diminishing, I've taken economics here. Law of diminishing returns means, agar mere paas ek machine tha, and if I have got 10 people in my company and I'm doing 1 crore turnover, if I take another 10 people, will I do 1 more crore, 2 crores turnover? The answer is no. When one resource gets doubled or increased, the effectiveness is not the same as per the number of things increasing. That is what law of diminishing return thinks. Once when you add resources, the returns are not directly proportional. It is on a slightly reducing scale. Now, if you look at it, machines, there's a confusing answer here. A machine decreased in utility as its parts became old. This has got nothing to do with law, because there is no addition of resources, neither reduction of resources. The right answer is a factory gets doubled its workforce, but what happened was the output increased only by 50%. That is bound to happen. Okay, because labor case there are other activities also which come into play. So this is predominantly an example of answer plus Y. I'll give you another answer plus Y example. Explain the process of a heat pump. I'm getting into physics here because I do not know my audiences, diverse audiences. Okay. So explain the process of a heat pump. A simple higher order question. If I leave the door of a refrigerator open, will the room temperature reduce? And now understand this. I'm bringing the thought process of a heat pump. You give this, explain the process of a heat pump. They would have by-hearted it. They will vomit in the exam. But a 2-mark question can make them understand whether they know the concept or they don't know the concept. That's the beauty about higher order questions. Okay. What we do is, let me go for the 2 more slides and then I'll take a call. Okay. Now extra tips. Once this basic techniques, when you start playing around with it, you will be getting lot of questions. But by giving the choices, there are some things which I will share. One is you need to wrong response questions. You have to actually feed them some answers which look right but has to be wrong. So that is only because even if the number of questions per question changes, there is no necessary that you have to have only 4 choices for every question. One can have 4, one can have 3 in the online place. That's the biggest advantage. Content should be very relevant to, it's being homogeneous. All the answers should be kind of in one homogeneous fashion. So the students get much more. They have read the question 2 times. Use answers given in previous exams as answers here. This is students do this, okay? Internal test when you give an answer which was the right answer and they find that answer, they don't even read the question. So wrong answers ka jagah pe give answers which were right answers in some of your previous tests. This works as a very strong plausible distractor. Okay, going further, keep option lengths of all answers similar. Normally, I have seen that the right answer, if it's not well drafted, the right answer is always the longest answer, okay, or the shortest answer. So keep the option answer lengths similar. Okay. Okay. Don't always make B or C the right answer. Sometimes make A the right answer, make B the right answer, make E random. Google Forms actually gives you the flexibility to change the order randomly without you taking chance. It will give the random answer orders for every single question paper for every student. Every question numbers can be changed randomly. The option answers can be changed randomly. I will show it to you how to use Google Forms next couple of minutes. Avoid none of the option unless you will never know, because if the right answer is not part of the right answer is not part of the multiple choice and all the 4 were wrong answers, we don't know if the students have actually understood the answer by saying that none of the above. We also want them to know which is the right answer. So make sure that you don't use none of the above options. Validate the test. Please validate that test. When I say validate, share it with your teacher members, faculty members, 4 or 5 people, and check the test. Don't check the person, check the test. Okay, when I say validate the test, not the person testing. Okay, don't question the knowledge, test the test. Okay, because what happens is sometimes during validation, you actually come to know that there is one particular thing which everybody has assumed in that manner, but you wanted something else to be conveyed. So then you have to change the wordings, change the context, change the flow or something like that. So validate the test before it's actually published. And that's why I say uniform disconnects. If by any and more stretch, then you have to change the context. Okay. Now the real question here is not in creating the question. The question is who will bell the cat in terms of Bloom's taxonomy will 100% work only and only if our pedagogy style also changes. Ideally speaking, L3 to L6 cannot be taught in classrooms. We have to be only catalysts, facilitators, and it has to be induced. Students should be able to, in that environment, that mahal has to be created. The students start answering. When we ask and we to make students answer. So excitement has to be brought to the students. It has got to be based on experiential learning. Okay, we cannot teach experiential learning by telling about a subject. Experiential learning has to be experienced. Some of the examples of experiential learning could be gamification, case studies. These are the things which is actually, based on experiential learning where a student realizes what's happening. Student participation is going to be the key. When I say student participation, it is not those top 5-6 people who participate. Probably everybody, above more than mixed average have to actually start participating. That's when L3 section. Most of the top B schools, top colleges, they do not teach L1 and L2 in a classroom. L1 and L2 are predominantly pre-class assignments where they read and come, and the session in a classroom actually starts happening from L3 onwards. Now, there are limitations. I am not saying that this is a perfect thing to have. There are limitations. Yes, there are going to be certain management rules saying that we need to make sure that student has to pass the university exams. There are going to be limitations, but at least let us start. Let us start incorporating 30% of higher order learning, and then slowly take it to the next level. But if we keep doing the same thing, the results which we get will also be the same thing. So start focusing a little bit on taking that to the next level. Okay. Before I do hands-on question, now here I have asked a question to ma'am, and ma'am, hands-on ke liye mujhe aur 10 to 15 minutes lagega. Should I do the hands-on and take questions, or should I take questions on this, and somebody from the organizers can let me know what I should do?
So I think you can go ahead with this, because you are already taking the questions along with your session.
I have not answered any question.
You've not answered all, but I think you can continue at least for about let us say 10 minutes, and then.
Okay, I'll do one thing. I will go to Google Forms and do it on fast forward. Okay, and then probably take questions at the end. So all of you just start looking at the screen. I'm just going to do screen share and tell you how to use Google Forms on that. 1 second. So share screen. I need to come to, yeah. Okay. So all of you know how to use the Google Forms. Go to forms.google.com. You can actually directly type forms.google.com. And if you have your Google logged in, it comes straight to this particular screen. You will create a new form. 1 second. How do I? 1 second. Okay. So you create on this plus sign here. A new form will automatically get created. This thing. So first thing, let me give it a name, test 1. So whatever description you want to give, exam, subject name, domain name, XYZ, whatever you want, you can type. Then give the name for the form. By taking your cursor here and clicking on this, it will take the default name. So if it is a geography test, history test, marketing test, finance test, HR test, electronics test, that name you can give unit test 1, unit test 2, final assessment 1, whatever name you can give, play with it. Okay. Now questions, predominantly whatever question you want to write, let me use the word question. So whatever you want, you can type here. Now there are 4 options which comes here. I'm sure you all know this. Multiple choice means only one answer will be the right answer. So suppose I'll just add here option 1, answer 2, answer 2, answer 3, etc. So multiple choice will allow the user only to pick one. But the same thing, if I allow you to check boxes, then it can be multiple number of, they can pick 1, they can pick all the 3, they can check 1 more. That's a subtle difference between 2. Now, very important thing which I'm going to share here. So first, make this question required if you don't have negative marks. If you are giving negative marks, then this should not be required, because you should give me the option of passing a question. But if there's no negative marks, you can put it as required. I leave that choice to you. Now understand there are 3 dots here. Very important. Please pay attention here. On these 3 dots, if you click here, you can shuffle the answer option. So every time a person is seeing a question, he will get different choices, but the right answer will be there for him. Okay, so that is, you can shuffle the choices. Okay, next. Now, how do I give marks in online? So please understand there is something called as settings. All of you can see this next to the eye lobe there. So there is settings. Click on that. First thing is you have to make this test into a quiz. So make it into a quiz. So once you have made this into a quiz, this becomes a particular quiz. So here, now there are 2 options. Release the marks, greatest marks. Release the marks immediately after each submission or later after manual review. Now, if somebody asked me a particular question, if there is a descriptive answer, how do I say? So if you are going to put descriptive answers also on a Google form, then don't say release the marks immediately. I would always prefer let the marks be released later on, once everybody has given the answers. So later on. Now, respondents can see the answer to which question, which correct answers. So this is something you should tell them whether they should be able to see the right answers after attempting or that. So if you're going to do the same exam in multiple choices, you should click on this so that no respondent after submitting will know what is the right answer until the grading comes to him. But if you say they can see the answers then and there, so they can see this. You click on the missed answer questions, the questions that I got wrong, and both is correct answers. So that is something which you take a call. Okay, next. Having come to this, let me save this. Okay, now comes the next option. Now in this option, 1 second, this is playing havoc. Let me bring it in. Okay, now the next option is when you come here, how do I put the right answer? So here you will click on answer key. When you click on answer, suppose 2 is the right answer. So I will click on 2. It understood that 2 is the right answer. and here I will give marks. Suppose it's a 2-mark question, 1-mark question. So I will give the marks. And once I give the marks, I will say done. Okay. Now there is one more thing you should do. Suppose if you are going to give answer, suppose 2 were the right answer. So here I am going to click on answer feedback. So if somebody clicks 1 or 3, okay, then I can tell them the reason for the right answer. Okay, the answer that you got was wrong. This is the right answer because. So this, for wrong answers, you can give a statement which will come when they click the wrong answer. And for correct answers, what you type here will come when they click the wrong answer. So this is something which you will understand from right answer and wrong answer. Okay. Then where was I? 1 second. Yeah. So this is one thing. Then the next one is there is a particular color palette. Okay. There is something called as customized theme. This is not a proctoring tool, but by giving it a nice fluorescent color. Okay, you can have a nice dark orange color, or you can pick a nice color from the theme color plus. Suppose if I go to this color scheme here, okay, by giving it a color, you know what happens? When I'm observing 16 people giving my exam in Zoom, I can see if all the screens are showing the same color code. That means they have not changed the browser. The moment somebody changes the browser, you don't have to monitor with them in an internal assessment. You can see the Zoom screens or whichever software you're using, 16 screens being seen there. You know, you can actually see that and check it out. But don't use it in online exam, because if somebody does a screen sharing of the thing, it might work as a disadvantage. But you can see that everybody has got this orange color screen simultaneously on. So that is one level of why you should use theme option for proctoring purposes. Then comes suppose if it's a descriptive, the question is very big, or it's an accountancy question, I have to type something. So instead of typing the question, suppose let me go to say done. Suppose instead of typing the question, okay, instead of typing the question, can I do something else? So I go to add a question. So now in this question, if I click here, I can actually put a picture there. So suppose if I upload from, I've written a question, taken a photograph, handwritten question, taken a photograph, just example like this, and this becomes my question. So there you can directly put the picture as a question. Now look at the beauty. So this picture has come as a question, and then depending upon the font size, it will actually become big. And then you want to put a question here, you can put the question, or you can just leave it blank, and then you can start giving the options here. So that also works. And this. Now what happens is, once you submit this question, and if you have given a descriptive answer question, then you can go back to the settings and manually assign marks. When you assign manually marks and then publish results, so 1 or 2 descriptive questions can also be possible on this form. I know I went very fast, so I would like to answer more questions, rather than giving you a overall gyan, because the time period we are running short of time. So I would rather come back on the screen and take all the questions. In case is some specific questions on the software, I can actually come back to the software. And if somebody shares me, I have one video of a particular, where I've actually shown how to use these forms. I can share that. Okay, that's something. So I bring it open for the question answer session. I think that would be much more better than me talking about a software which anybody can actually do Google search, or YouTube videos are available for you all to understand the software. I would prefer more questions on the higher order questioning rather than the software part, because software part is easily available. Anybody can get videos. Yeah. Is there a chronology of questions, or how do I take it? Ma'am, yes.
You could just go
for shortlist the questions. You can shortlist the questions and ask me one on one. I'm willing to answer everything.
See, certain questions are on the Google form, but I think the quick hands-on that you have given, sir, I think we can all try and find out on our own.
Okay. I think that would be better, because that is something which is easy.
At least we know where to look.
Exactly. There are YouTube videos on any particular aspect of Google Forms, for example. Hundreds of videos available. Hindi mein
there is one question.
Yes, ma'am.
That says, what is the process? What is the process of authenticating students on Google Form?
Okay. Now there are 2 things. When you are asking a higher order question, you're talking about proctoring an exam. Okay. Proctoring basically supervising of an exam. There are some softwares which come, but they come with a lot of cost. Now there are, let me talk to you 3 models. One is the paid model. One is the free model. Okay. The paid model comes in 2 ways. One is artificial intelligence based proctoring, and one is manual proctoring. If you go and attend exams from TCS centers, they do a manual and artificial based proctoring as well as physical proctoring. There's a CCTV camera, there's an audio microphone connected, so you can't talk to anybody. That's been continuously monitored. They monitor you from the front and from the back. Okay, they monitor you to observe, just like a real-time scenario. This is the paid version. There is another paid version with some proctoring companies. In fact, there's an Indian company just started. They do proctoring on a artificial intelligence basis. Basically, they see that they will not, once you load the software, it will not allow you to do any alt tab. That means you cannot change the screen, or you can't go to Google and search for the answer. So that is based on artificial intelligence. They also check for too much of silence, too much of keyboard movements. They have their own software things which keyboard movements. So they basically gauge that this is authentic, okay, or they black mark this, and based on validation they approve. Now let me talk the other way around. Let us talk about the free model. If my questions are, even if my questions get leaked, okay, if it doesn't make a difference, then I'm not bothered. So if I can set such kind of higher order question like an open book exam, refer the books in 1 hour ke andar, refer karke jo manta hai karo. But my objective is my students, if they have answered it right, because even if you ask a topper, the topper himself is not sure that the answer that he is given is right or wrong, unless there is 100% conceptual clarity. Okay, so I'm a very hardcore advocate of an open book exam. So if it's an open book exam kind of a scenario where the questions are such that it comes to the learning objective, blind copying will not help them. Adding negative marks also adds value. So these are some of the things. But can you do it in a university scale? Can you do it in your administrative capabilities and your management allowing you autonomous college? That's all I leave it to you on. So that call you have to take. But these are the 4 options. One is artificial intelligence based proctoring, hi-fi proctoring, and the last one is open-ended questions, where even if you copy in that 1-2 hours, I'm not bothered, as long as you have understood. And if my questioning is such that it doesn't matter, I don't think it actually matters. Have I answered that question? I do not know, but I think I did.
So one more question: how to create rank order questions in Google Form?
Can somebody
rank order questions?
I didn't get the question, ma'am. Sorry. Can whoever just rank order? You were talking about L1, L2, L3 kind of a thing.
I don't think that is what the.
Can somebody tell me what is rank order? I'll answer that question if I understood what the question is.
Okay. How can the MCQs be created for practical subjects, like, for example, fine arts?
Lovely. You can talk about Budras. I have attended an MCQ on yoga.
Okay.
You can put photographs, you can put video contents, and you can ask them what it is. Suppose if you want to check out what kind of this, see, we need to find out answers. So if it's a hardcore skill test based solution, then there will be a challenge. If you're going to evaluate my skill, now understand something. Exams are, there's a difference between knowledge and skills. Skills ke liye test hota hai. Knowledge ke liye exam hota hai. That's the difference between test and exam. Test the knowledge. Skills are tested by your exam. Skills are tested by test, and knowledge is tested by exams. So if I'm going to test my knowledge, MCQs are possible. But if you're going to test my skill, okay, then probably a real-time situation is necessary. Right. You want to check my communication skill, no amount of test can get you you can test my English, but English is knowledge. So that's a subtle difference between knowledge and skills. Skills, there will be a challenge. It will be a challenge.
Right, sir. Another question is, how can we get reflections from a student on higher order questions through MCQs? Okay.
Reflection has got nothing to do with higher order questioning or lower order questioning. Reflections is like VC sir was talking of. Reflection is predominantly aaj main dekha. The difference between feedback and reflection, if I can just take it to the next level, feedback is saying good, fantastic, okay, so. That is feedback. But taking something and implementing it, that is where the reflection is. The reflection will be seen in the behavioral change or the attitude change of students. Okay, a simple reflection, I'll tell you. If students are coming to your classroom sharp at 9 o'clock and not because you are strict, okay, that is a reflection. People want to sit for your lectures, that is a reflection. People are paying attention in the question, that's a reflection. People asking you questions, that's a reflection. Because they have started processing what you are getting it internally. Reflection is internally in the student's mind. That is what he said. Giving a feedback is telling what is there. Okay, good, bad, ugly, whatever, that is it. But reflection is something which we start seeing the process of change happening in the students. That is reflection. So that will be seen in the behavioral. Any change in a person, is shown by his behavior, his or her behavior. So reflection in people will be seen predominantly from the behavioral aspect of a student, and that is what is we need to be monitored. But that can be monitored? No, that has to be gauged. Okay, feedback can be monitored. That's what he said. People, feedback is data. Okay, the behavior is information. That's a difference.
Yes, sir. One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
How can L3 to L6 be induced in online learning and teaching?
Okay, use tools. Bloom's taxonomy themselves promote a lot of tools. One is asking questions in a classroom session is one of the best possible tool. And don't ask MCQs that time. That time, you in a classroom session, you will ask questions, probing questions. Ask them questions where they have to think. When students think and they are answering, whether they give the right answer or not does not matter. But the fact that they are thinking actually makes them think, and the cognitive learning process has started. Okay, you can work like catalyst. You give them 1 or 2 pointers. Don't give the answers, 1 or 2 pointers. Let them still probe on that. Give one more hint. Let them still probe. Give them one more hint, and then take them to the right answer. So this way, when they are using their thoughts to understand and the problem even before the faculty teaches, okay, then you are actually taken them from the higher order learning, whether it's L3 or L4 or L5. It starts happening when students. This is one thing. Asking questions, one tool. Second tool, simulation based. There are a lot of games, lot of videos available on simulation based. There are companies which have, one company which I'm mentoring actually has created games to teach subjects. So students play the concept, they understand concepts left, right, and center. That's one way. Third, case studies. If you're in a B school or a business school or a commerce college kind of a thing, case studies help. You know, where you learn from other people's mistake, you learn from other people's success. And the internal discussion that happens in a case study brings about cognitive learning. So predominantly there are 3-4 tools. One is videos and asking questions, simulation-based games, and then the case studies. These are some of the pedagogy tools which are available for andragogy, or what we call as andragogy is learning from adults, or experiential learning. So these are predominantly the tools available as on today. We use your creativity, pick whatever suits your personality, whatever you are comfortable with. But the fact is, let us not come and teach this, and you take notes, and then that's L1 and
L2. Right, sir. It's almost time now. So
okay,
I think we need. I
hope I did some justice.
Definitely, sir. There are a lot of questions.
I have a question. In case somebody asks you for my email address, you can just share them, because I can share the slides, or I can share it to you. You can share your email address, or whatever is the procedure. I do not know. I don't know if I can share my email. That's why I'm giving it.
Sure. Now, just a moment. It is my pleasant task to propose a vote of thanks. We are extremely grateful to Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for his continued motivation, to all the teachers to upgrade ourselves in academics as well as research. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your valuable time for this webinar. My sincere thanks to Professor Chakravarti and Professor Uma Iyer for their support and guidance in organizing this webinar. On behalf of MDC and IQAC, I thank Mr. Ramani Venkat for a very engaging, very lucid presentation. I believe each one of us was listening to every word that you spoke. You kept us
I hope I did justice.
Yes, you kept us awake through the entire session. So thank you very much. Thanks are also due to Arun Anand sir for his technical support, and Dr. Parag Shukla for coordinating between MDC and IQAC team. And of course, my profuse thanks to all the participants for the overwhelming response. The feedback forms will be mailed to you, followed by the e-certificates. So thank you all. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.